Our interview guest today, unfortunately, is having internet problems. So he's not going to be able to join us. He's going to come back in March. However, we're going to pivot a little bit and talk about what would be worth our time, energy, and money in 2025. I mean, I was thinking this, was sort of something along these lines is appropriate to reflect on the new year. And if you want to go into what you feel like was not worth time, energy, and money in 2024, that's okay. But this can also just be forward thinking. I'll just say this. I intentionally started posting on a regular basis last year to my YouTube channel and my social media on January 1st, even though I am not going to spend New Year's Eve working on that. I do intend to keep doing that and to up the quality. So I think it's worth my time, energy, and money to learn more about video editing, the fitness topics that are important to me, just what people need in 2025.
That's amazing. If you don't mind me asking, what have you seen your top rated or top viewed or most successful videos be? Is there certain content topics, areas? Is it just curious?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah, absolutely. When you release them, I get notifications. I watch through them. I think they're
Oh,
great. I love
thank
it.
you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. So would love to know kind of what you've learned throughout that year, right?
Well, I very much appreciate that. I think that you learn that certain themes, have the viewership that you hope, and maybe some don't. I think that anything on exercise and stretching does okay. People really like stretching, foam rolling, anything that is marketed to make you feel good. I released a bunch of recipes in November. I thought that would be a good time for that, and it turned out to be a perfect time for that. And I was shocked that the healthier green bean casserole one was the winner, because I thought the other recipes were more approachable, especially since I'm not a chef. I'm just trying to put a healthier spin. But if we're being really honest, the winners for views on my channel, the first one is a 1-minute reel I made for National Hot Dog Day, where I put hot dog on lettuce wraps because apparently that is highly controversial and I didn't realize it.
All right.
And people love controversy.
I
And
suppose so. I
then
didn't realize that either, but I love that it is.
And then the other one is not as savory. It's the one I did about foot mobility. One of maybe 2 videos that my feet made it into.
Interesting. Okay, I will try and sum this up in the best way possible. It sounds like you have found some niche topics that people are engaging a bit more with as you're releasing these videos, which is great. I mean, I think, yes, like you said, it is controversy, but it is leading to some engagement. And so hopefully people are getting something out of that and
Yeah.
hopefully exploring the rest of your channel and getting engaged.
Well, and I think I've learned too, I definitely used to struggle with wanting to serve everybody. And it's okay for those niche things to do well, but that's not the holistic help I want to bring. So yeah, sometimes it's very surprising.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have those one-offs, but yeah, I think overall,
You come back to what you're passionate about. Yeah, because actually that video that I sent you guys is kind of about some of this niche tech, right? Did they go too niche with it? And could they not figure out how to evolve? I mean, kind of like your Redbox example. So we sort of pivoted, you guys. We're talking about what we think would be worth our time, energy, and money in 2025. And maybe, what 2024 taught us, if you'd like to take some lessons from the past year. That's always a good thing. How was 2024 for you, Matt?
2024 was good, busy, and I can say that, but I think everybody kind of feels that. Yeah, it's good overall. For me, it's balancing all of the things. So if y'all aren't aware, I'm in school still. So I'm finishing a master's in data science at Northeastern University.
Woo woo! Shout out.
Exactly. I'm teaching at Northwestern University. I have a full-time job, so I have a 9 to 5. So it's all the things, right? And so 2024 taught me that there are a lot of things happening in my life. And I think going into 2025, this is actually very relevant, is what's serving me, what isn't, what can I drop, right? And so, that was my biggest takeaway. That and being back at school when you're older is hard. It's a lot. And in some ways, it reminds you of what life was like, 15 years ago, 20 years ago or so, right? Working with younger students on group projects at all hours of the night right? Because that's when they're available is much different than, hey, I can only work between the hours of 6 and 9 because I have work and I have other priorities and I like to go to bed. So some of those challenges have become real in the past year, but I think I have a clear path on where I'm going to be. I think in 2025, I have a couple projects I'm working on. One's actually for school. I'm going to do an independent study and hopefully turn that into a product that I can then build on. And so there's one of two areas. One is determining and understanding bias within AI, figuring out how to action plan around that. And then the other one is determining the impact and predicting brand and consumer trust. So figuring out what the impact is that to both consumers and brands themselves and being able to quantify that in some way. And so still real fuzzy on the details, working with a professor that I've had in the past to kind of turn that into reality, right? So put our plan together, put our scope of the project together, but that'll be coming together in the next probably week or so.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that's where I'm at in 2025. And then really just taking time to like be done with school because I will be done in 2025.
Yeah. Does that mean travel for you, or does that mean get to enjoy your house or do something to the house?
Undecided, right? We put some work into the house last year, so we have this wonderful patio out front that we can spend more time on, enjoy, spend time going out on the water, going boating. So all the things that you want to do that gets in the way of life. But yeah, I think taking some time in 2025 just to unwind, relax, and reprioritize, I guess.
That sounds like it makes a lot of sense. And congratulations on your home stretch too. Woo!
It's been a while. It's one of those things that you sign up for and you're like, oh yeah, this will be fine. And then you get, 4 years down the road and you're like, oh, I'm still doing this because I'm having a great time. Great. But it's been great. The topic's amazing. The program's been great. So I can't complain.
I'm glad. Well, there's never a perfect time either, right? And I think this is something we've talked about, like, on our discussions, like several times. You have to just figure out when is that right time to take the leap for yourself. And I hope it pays off in spades.
Yeah, we'll see. If nothing else, it's been fun. So, at least I have that.
Good. And you've got some new connections too. Giovanni, did you have anything you want to share about what you're looking forward to in 2025 or what you learned from 2024?
Yes, of course. The first thing is to be focused on my new job that I started almost 1 month ago.
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Indeed, I'm very happy that I passed the period of proof. And so I have 1 year ahead with these new activities, and they are very, very interesting, honestly. They are related of electronics and mechanics. So it's even, I had to, let's say, think a bit on what I studied at university to refresh my mind. So I'm very happy to be focused on these activities for the coming year.
That's great. You'll be taking on some new skills.
Yes, yes, of course. There is always something new that I learn about circuits, about the new types of softwares that are in the market, about cameras. We are speaking about system that controls the production of the machines through cameras with images. And so I need to learn a lot on that. Yes, of course.
Yeah, not something I would walk in being familiar with either. And I'm sure, having an engineering background is not all encompassing. Wish you a lot of luck with that.
Yes, yes, it will be a lot of work. I found a nice team of work. This is, I believe, a nice opportunity. It's a bit far in some way from logistics. That was my previous background. However, I found a lot of connections in terms of knowledge that I have. I can spend them. I need to be very focused, I guess, because 1 year is not few time, but neither a lot. And if I will be focused, I hope everything will be even smoother during my job coming month.
Well, I hope it works out the way you picture it. That sounds great.
Giovanni, what types of overlapping skills have you seen between logistics and now? I think it sounds like you're doing more on the engineering side. What are some of those skills you've seen that have overlapped?
The skills are related to the manage of the warehouse. That is not a proper warehouse as you can imagine. This is some shelves of components. And for the purchasing experience that I have since We need to buy the components, assemble them in the office, and then to go there with an installation to the client. The purchasing and the logistic part are covered in the early stages of the projects, and I guess those things are quite familiar to me. I hope that even I can share my previous knowledge. So yes, that's basically answers your question.
That's really cool. That's great. I love to hear it. It's always interesting to see like some of those skills. Like I think for me, the most interesting thing, when I'm switching, because I switched my areas of focus a couple years ago. So previously, and not that I don't still do both, but previously, early on in my career, I was doing a lot of work in marketing and digital marketing, and then transitioned a bit more into business operations, strategy, and digital transformation. And now I'm primarily doing digital transformation for a large company here in the US. And it's just been interesting to see that most of the skills I've acquired, regardless of what you call it, certainly overlap. And I've been able to bring a lot of those transferable areas into each field or role I've had. And so I love to hear that you're able to do so. Even though they may not seem related, you can still bring some of that across. So that's great. I love it.
I completely agree with your point.
I see this within classmates, right? They kind of panic when they're thinking about their majors and if they're they're doing the right major and if they're getting into the right area. I remember there was a student after class, I was asking one of my professors if she wanted to go into, I think it was geospatial analysis within the state of Maine and really wanted to get into geospatial analysis. And she's like, well, what if I get into this and I don't like it? My professor's like, what do you mean? What if you don't like it? She's like, well, I don't know what to do. This is what I've always done. And so there's really that moment of like, you just change, right? Like the skills you're building now in school and outside are certainly going to be applicable, but it was like, it takes experience to kind of have that mindset and be able to go, okay, well, yeah, actually I can transfer these skills. But thinking about that, right? Like you can really get into that. I know when I was trying to change careers, I was panicked because I was like, I don't have these skills. It doesn't matter. And then actually getting into it, you realize how transferable it is. So kind of to your point, like there's always going to be something that you can bring over. And it's just really cool to see that. I think we make things more frightening or larger than they need to be, right? Especially when going to experiencing something new or getting into something new. So I think that's really cool. I think that's really neat that you're able to pull in a bunch of your past skills.
I totally agree. Brian, you don't have to, but do you want to talk about any reflections learned from 2024 or anything you're looking to invest more time, energy, and money into in 2025?
Boy, is that a loaded question.
I mean, it's supposed to be ambiguous. It's not supposed to be loaded.
I don't know. 2025 is going to be a lot. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. I'm being kind of ambiguous about the answer just because there's some complexity coming into 2025 that's going to be exciting, fun, but a big challenge. And so work is going to kind of be the same through at least the first 8 months of next year. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting time.
That's good. I'm going to ask a question that I don't know if you can answer, and it may be related to 2025. Political career, is that something you want to continue to pursue or have plans to continue to pursue? Or
I would have told you absolutely not up until a few weeks ago. I feel slightly differently about that now toward the maybe.
Okay, that's great.
It's good, though, that you're open.
I know it's super kind of evasive on certain parts. There's some family stuff that we've got going on right now that I'm not sure we're ready to share. I don't know that it has been shared. If it's not, then I'm not going to share until
I don't believe it has. So
Also, we were recording this.
Yeah, there you go. See?
So I talked about, how I feel about it in relation to the YouTube channel. I think on a larger level too, it's okay if, there are things we experienced in 2024 that we're ready to just see go. I mean, I don't get to decide really how society acts. From our small corner, I would love to have, more influence, to have people be willing to come together around common themes that help us all. And I don't think any of those are political, unfortunately.
I will say this. What I found interesting, this is probably a controversial thing to say, but I really don't give a shit. That CEO murder that happened a few weeks ago. Well, the thing I found fascinating about that was just how that seemed to bring people together. There certainly is, and rightfully so, a bit of an ick factor, right, to the idea of a murder as a positive thing. But it really did kind of talk about inequality and access to healthcare and why is it okay for someone someone or a corporation to decide the fates of hundreds of thousands of lives, but it's not okay for this individual to decide about this other individual's life. It really does bring a lot of questions. It really does kind of bring the idea of what is right and how do we become a more just and equal society. And no, I can't sit here and tell you that I think that it's right that he just unilaterally decided to do that. But at the same time, what responsibility does the corporate world have to society? And what is the value of insurance companies at large? Simply from the perspective of they're literally a middleman between us and the healthcare that we're trying to receive. There's all sorts of interesting ethical questions that come about from that. And it definitely kind of piqued my interest quite a bit.
And I think the good thing, if you will, just trying to see the silver lining, is that it did point out like what people have or don't have in their healthcare. I mean, until you showed me, I wouldn't have realized that Kaiser was, I don't know, doing such a good job, rated so highly among some others, because it's easy to have issue with what doesn't go right sometimes.
Right. And I mean, you were kind of talking about the claims that get rejected, and Kaiser's sitting somewhere in the 7 to 10% range. And United Health was sitting at like 34%. So you've got 1 out of every 3 claims. This isn't out of 1 out of every 3 people. This is 1 out of every 3 claims is denied. That touches probably every single person that has that company for an insurer. And then you're getting into the idea of, people don't generally have much choice as to who their insurer even is. That's, often decided by the business that you work for. And so, it really does just bring a ton of interesting ethical questions into the picture that I could go all day in my political beliefs about what should happen, what could happen, that sort of thing. But I mean, just having the conversation, I think, is something that really needs to happen.
Yeah, I can agree with all those points. I think it is, to your point, like Brian, like everybody has been impacted in some way, shape, or form by insurance, at least in the United States, by an insurance claim being denied or some form of coverage being denied or exorbitant costs because that one piece of it wasn't, or, I think we all have gotten a bill and just been like, wait, I owe how much? For what? I've been paying into this for how many years? And this is happening? Okay, great. So to Nancy, your point, I don't think that the actions taken were right. However, I do think that it brings to light a lot of the similarity and challenges, right, within the insurance system in the US and some of the other kind of larger challenges that we face. But that's, just my 2 cents and potentially for another topic.
Yeah. And it's hard to, reflect about a year and not look at some of the really big things that have happened too. I mean, I know that one is pretty recent in our minds, but these are definitely the things that shape how everyone approaches things, thinks about them, even approaches different problems. I mean, I know we've talked to several entrepreneurs that have talked about like the difficulty in getting into the US market. Will something like this, make it, I don't think directly, but will it make it easier or more difficult in the long run? I think of it as like a third party entity, like a non-insurer to come in with a solution that helps the US with healthcare. So I don't really know the answer to that, but I think it's interesting.
Or this is the one piece of personal opinion I'll try to add. The more people that you have between you and your healthcare, the higher the costs are going to be.
That's fair. I also feel like, I don't know, and maybe it's just a feeling on my part, but with some of the ways the operating works in healthcare companies, sometimes they are the barrier. I feel like a lot of the barriers have been removed for us for cost of like prescription drugs for our case, and that's nice, but not being able to, see the best doctor because they're out of your network or whatever, like that is, that's something that a lot of people battle, that I think healthcare companies have kind of like created that problem.
Yeah, I would agree.
Anyway, I hope that everyone has a healthy start to 2025. Hi there. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you mind leaving us a review, a like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Thanks so much. That really helps our reach. The Founders Voyage podcast is now proudly sponsored by VidOps. Kane at VidOps has been taking care of our editing since early 2024. He works efficiently, and I'm sure you'll agree that he does a great job. Thank you to VidOps for helping bring this podcast to life. If you want the same great support we're getting for your podcast, or you need help with video, photography, or animation, you can get 10% off at vidops.io using our referral code Voyage. That's vidops.io, referral code Voyage. Now back to the show. So how about technology? What do you guys think were the best things you saw come out of 2024? What do we need or not need technologically in 2025? Because I'm sure we're going to create a lot of things we don't need.
More random robots.
Yeah.
I love what AI has done over the past probably 2-3 years for us, right? And large language models, they're solution based, right? So they are solving a specific problem or geared towards solve a specific problem. I think one of the areas that I see is a challenge is that a lot of people just believe that whatever this robot spits out or this large language model spits out is going to be accurate and correct, and they're going to run with it. I've seen it in my workplace of using Copilot to do all of your things for you and it being wrong. And so I think for me, I'd love to see in 2025 more education around accuracy of some of these tools that we're running towards and building. And it's not the pretty side of AI, right, or technology, but putting in kind of more measures to ensure that the answers we are putting in place, either if we don't, if they aren't correct and we don't know, making sure that it's very aware to the end user. Because right now I feel like it's a little blurb at the bottom that says, we're not always right. So what? But I think us as humans want to believe that it is.
I love that. We're not always right. So what? That's so honest. It should be.
It's like a little tag that says, we're not 100% accurate. Make sure you're fact checking. It's like, well, who's going to go do that? Right? Nobody. They're going to just go, oh, they told me this, so I'm going to, and I mean, I've had colleagues do the exact same thing of like, oh yeah, Copilot told me this was the answer. And I was like, well, that's not right at all. And they're like, you mean it's wrong? I'm like, yeah, it can be wrong, especially when it comes to math problems. It's not made for math.
My school where I got my master's degrees from actually reached out to its alumni maybe 3-4 months ago, and they decided to offer a class on Gen AI, Copilot, all of them. And it wasn't a technical course. It was exactly the type of thing we're talking about here. It's how do you utilize them to be more effective, but also how do you understand its limitations and try to make them work for you within those limitations. And so they were expecting 25 people to want to attend this thing. They ended up with over 500 students deciding to be a part of it, and it completely changed the way that they approached the course, and they kind of ended up trying to redesign it on the fly. But it was a really interesting 8-week certificate course, and the fact that they offered it for free to the alumni was just really, really cool. But I mean, there is a huge need and a desire for training on these tools, but proper training on these tools so you know how to use them without being in the situation that you're in where you've got teammates that are just trusting it implicitly when you definitely should not be doing that.
I actually think I had a coworker when I brought this up go, wait, you mean I can't trust this implicitly? I go, no, not at all. And she was like, oh, I thought we could. I thought it was like a tool that was going to be right all the time and I could just put in whatever I want. I'm like, well, you can do that. I mean, that's your own prerogative to trust it, but it's not always right. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the challenges. And I think, just an understanding of how a large language model works, right? Like understanding just like how it's put together, the data it's training on, right? It's not always going to be right. It's going to take what you feed it and kind of spit it back out based on what it knows.
What do you think of using that as a regulation? Like basically saying that like you need to post, the performative accuracy of your tool. People are making them post calories like front and center right here. I mean, people will ignore it.
Of course, you're going to ignore what you want to, you're going to ignore what you want to, right? Like it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be great. What are you using to measure accuracy? Like that's my first question is like, what's that measure of accuracy that can be universal? I mean, we can use certain scores, sure, certainly, but like, is everybody going to know what that means, right? And so I think there's a whole lift to that.
How do you keep scoring it, right? Like, not just from the initial tests, things like that, but as it goes along, because it is constantly learning, quote unquote, it's going to change all the time based on input and output.
I have an idea. What if you had there are all these labels that food companies can pay for, right? Like to talk about, they're like organic, right? Doesn't that mean like 98.6% is organic, something like that? So you're like, you have this purity rating. Maybe next year you actually want to pay for that purity rating. I know that sort of system has its own issues, but I feel like that would be better than people just assuming that everything out there is equally bad or equally good.
As long as the organizations that would do such a thing are independent and trustworthy, I think there's value in that. The thing about it is that it is an ongoing thing. I couldn't tell you with any confidence that once a year is the right interval, right? It could be once every 6 months, it could be quarterly. And it gets really expensive and really challenging to try to keep that up because, again, these things are learning at an exponential rate. The one thing I would say, just kind of going back to what Matt was saying a little bit ago, giving people a basic understanding that this is all statistics. If they can understand that everything is a decision based on probability, and there's very few things in the world that are 100% likely, that at least gives everyone a baseline of, oh, this may not be right. I don't know how wrong it's going to be, but it's not necessarily going to be right.
That's true. And I love that idea. I think I just know that people like stickers, like they like pretty things. And they're like, oh, our AI is fair trade. Like it took a
Yeah.
while for these things to get their reputation in general, too.
Reuse Clippy. Reuse that little paperclip from Microsoft and just have them just pop up after a prompt and say,
Yeah.
I could be a dumbass sometimes,
But I mean, the dangerous thing is when I do look at companies that, we're 1% for the planet and we're fair trade. And I just assume that they have ethics. And that would be a really good cover for them to market to me if they are unethical, because it seems like they're aligning with values that I have. So I definitely see the hole in that system too.
Yeah. Brian, I want to touch on something that you mentioned here is like the accuracy of it. And whether this is true or not, there's been a lot of talk in AI about how these large models, I'll use ChatGPT because that's what everyone's going to be most familiar with. And that's what a lot of other ones are built on. Copilot's built on chat. So they're running out of data to train the model. We're just running out of the amount of data that's been created or being created. Now, is that true? I don't know, right? Like how tapped into video are they? I don't know. Video is hard to process. So who knows? But that being said, like the models will get worse with less data because there's also the challenge of training it on your own data, right? So you are then regurgitating, like people are then putting AI data, output back onto the web. If you're scraping it, you're just taking in the same data you've already had. You're not learning anything new, right? Because you are literally taking what you've already done. And so you're actually going to get worse. So I feel like we're at a point where we're going to start seeing some, maybe, I don't know, some worse results, as time goes on, as we don't have as much to train on. But that's not my expertise. So
I would say this. I think you're onto something with that. But I think it's less just that data is going to continue to be a thing, right? Like it's not going anywhere. There's still going to be a lot of it. The issue is more, what are they going to be allowed to scrape? Now that everyone has kind of an understanding of, hey, this is my intellectual property, don't touch this. Just by that, you're going to see less of it. And then the concern I would have just from an ethics perspective is, okay, so the people that are allowing their data to be viewed, what ulterior motive may they have for allowing that to be shared? Because we've seen time and time again that people are more than willing to train these models to nefarious ends, right? We saw it with the Microsoft one viewing nonsense in Twitter before. This isn't going to just go away. It's probably going to intensify. So you won't just have individual bad actors, but state bad actors as well.
If you can add, yes, indeed, those like ChatGPT, those AI tools, in some cases really solve issues. But from my understanding, there is not such a tutorial, a course, an online course, as Brian mentioned, to learn about them. To understand their potential. I learned about ChatGPT just using it. Maybe they can improve really the work. or not, because they are not perfect indeed. But I mean, in my opinion, they are really growing in terms of possibilities they can give to workers. And so using them at least to know how to use them and then to choose if to use or not. And this is something that, at least on my understanding, is missing right now. I will not be fair. I mean, I'm not scared about them. At the opposite, in my opinion, they are very strong to program. For instance, ChatGPT is very good to produce good code if it learn the type of activity. And maybe there are even other potentials. Who knows? I mean, I'm very curious about the next year, how they will evolve. Hopefully, yes, they will be even more useful.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Giovanni. I mean, it is true, right? It is a tool, and it's kind of how you use it and how you take it. And I think it's been great to see that growth. And something you mentioned is you're excited to see where it goes in 2025. Just thinking about the growth of it so far, right? Going from like, I don't know, I'd say what 2022 is when people started kind of, you heard a bit about it. You might have heard something from someone else. It was released to the public. People were a bit excited about it, but didn't know what to do with it. I'd say now at this point, everybody's used some version of Copilot, chat, what have you. And that's in 2 years? So I'm really intrigued to see where this is going to end up in the next year. I mean, if you think about the number of updates you see coming out almost monthly, bi-monthly, I'm really intrigued to see where this ends up and where we go. I mean, I think it's a great tool. I think it's helped me. It certainly helped me a ton, right? Throughout my day-to-day. But yeah, being able to recognize that it is a tool. It's not always correct, but we can leverage it to help us be better at the work we're doing.
I agree. That's really the point you touched. I would echo it, almost everything you said.
So any other intentions or ideas or areas of interest or goals for 2025, you guys? They can be non-professional and they don't have to help the world necessarily.
I'm going to say this, although I have no concrete plans, but I would love to get into the kitchen more. I don't know if everybody on here knows this. At one point in my life, I was a professional chef. I went to culinary school.
That's great.
Yeah.
You let us forget.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I love to cook. And so it's something that I haven't done. And I mean, obviously with everything else in life, really excited to just have some more projects. In fact, like I bought a bunch of used cookbooks from all over the world, one in Portuguese. So now I'm going to have to learn Portuguese to understand it, or at least Google Translate it, right? So I'm pretty excited to dive into some of that and just explore the world of food some more. So that's 2025 goal.
Very cool. Did you have like a specialty? Is that a weird thing to ask? I know, like.
No, not a weird thing to ask. In fact, more common than not. To answer the question, I just like learning about new styles of food, regions, cultures. I think that's kind of how I learn, is like I'll learn about a culture by learning about their food, right? Where it came from, the history of it, how it started. I kind of dive deep into certain areas as I start getting into it. I guess personally, I skew towards a lot of Mediterranean and Middle Eastern food. So my mother was Lebanese, and so she still is. She didn't not stop being, but my mother's Lebanese.
That was a good joke. I liked it. Yeah. It's dry.
My mother's Lebanese, and so I grew up eating a lot of Lebanese food, and for me it was, that's what I knew. I was talking a little bit about this to a friend of mine, because I remember the first time I went to his house and I had macaroni and cheese as like a main course. Like I had no idea that macaroni and cheese could be made not out of a box and not like as a side dish to something else. I was floored. And so growing up, I'd say I had a really unique view on food just based on, my upbringing. I'd say that's probably what I skew towards most, is Middle Eastern, Mediterranean food.
Very cool. And mac and cheese.
And mac and cheese. Actually, I don't know that I've probably made it once in my life, to be honest.
Alton Brown has a really good from scratch mac and cheese recipe.
Really?
And that was like how I was like, oh, I can make a cheese sauce.
Yeah.
I think his directions are really good. It's not a light dish.
I'd assume that it isn't. No, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, that's my other outside professional work 2024 goals. What about you, Nancy?
I think it's great. Well, as far as cooking goes, I think I want to get better. I really like the challenge of making things healthier. And there are so many products that you can use to make things healthier. Like, I mean, I'm thinking like that mac and cheese, right? There's a really good protein pasta that's made with, semolina flour, but it's also lupini beans, I believe. I'm not really trying to advertise a product right now, but it has like the tooth feel that you would expect from pasta. It's the most successful one I've seen. And then I use Fairlife milk to boost the protein in a lot of things too. So I don't know anything really about trying to make a lower calorie cheese sauce, but you can boost the protein.
Some things when it comes to that, you just need to go all in. You know what I
I
mean?
do too. Yeah. Finding that balance
Correct. That's correct.
between like, I'm just going to have a small portion of this versus like,
The whole tray.
yeah, I know I've ranted on this on my channel and I need to find more ways to talk about it that are more fun, I guess. But yeah, figuring out that balance, like, and figuring out how to like honor what you're really craving so that you're good for the long haul. Because I think, unfortunately, a lot of the people I wind up talking to have trouble with portion control. And that's a different thing than, you can still make something. In the 90s, we took the fat and not the sugar, but we took the fat out of everything.
Everything.
It made it really low calorie, but people were still eating tons of it. So it didn't really solve the problem. But
No, it's true, and it's interesting to follow some of those trends, right, and see what that's like. And now, like we've gone kind of, I'd say we've almost gone in somewhat of the opposite direction of like now fats are great, but carbs are the enemy. We can't have bread, And
oh
I
man, there's so many things though, because like I feel like paleo looks less extreme than a lot of the things that are out now. Keto scares me a bit because I feel like people don't think of the long-term effects of some of the saturated fat, even if it works for you in the short term. The carnivore diet, I don't even know what to say about that. I mean, I feel like I saw people treating Atkins like that in the 90s, and it wasn't really intended to. You were supposed to be eating vegetables, but yeah, unless you have the I don't know, capacity to really make sure that you're getting the vitamins and minerals that your body needs in some other form, like we're kind of made to need certain types of fuel. So yeah, it's really interesting. I definitely enjoy looking at the diet trends.
yeah,
So maybe one of my intentions would be, by a better job, I mean a more entertaining job, unfortunately. Do a better job debunking some stuff that I feel is really damaging. Because I feel like it needs to be both friendly feeling and entertaining. If I just tell you that Doritos are poisoning you, I'm sure that that is a video that would get a lot of hits, but that's not really true. That's not really how I feel about it. Helping people make better choices over the long haul, I think I can do a better job with that.
gotta say, 2024, I had a Dorito for the first time, and it's probably since I was a child, and not for any reason besides I just never really was big into Doritos. But it sounds really weird that like I wasn't limiting my Dorito intake or anything. I wasn't purposely not like it just wasn't top of mind, right? Doritos were never my snack of choice, and so someone had some. They're delicious. Gotta say, they are fantastic. I mean, listen, they're what you expect, but they are fantastic. So
They're what you expect, but they're fit. Well, it depends on the flavor too, right? Because I was
yeah,
watching somebody try like some sort of like sriracha bugles or whatever, and they're like, "There's a chemically taste in here that I just can't get over." So it depends. I really enjoy trying new things, so I could totally, I'm not against new junk food products. I think I just want to transform our relationship with them so that we don't feel like that is the only, like, we don't think of that as food. We think of that as entertainment, you know?
yep, absolutely. And I think you hit on a key point there is like within moderation, right? So understanding that like completely limiting is going to be really do more harm than good, but being able to moderate and have a healthy relationship with it is probably the best way to approach that.
Especially this time of year.
Yeah.
Maybe we're kind of past cookie season, but for a lot of people, that's like a way to show love, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I digress. I appreciate you guys being so thoughtful and
Yeah.
going on this voyage with us today. as we broadly explored
All the
things
topics.
that annoyed us in 2024 and maybe what we can do in 2025. It's going to be a challenging year for some reason, but I think it's going to be a good year.
Yeah, and I think it's good to get your level set, right? I think this hour has been great for me just to think about more about what I'm, where I'm at, right? You get so
Good.
caught up in the day to day of like just trying to keep up with what you're doing that being able to take a step back and like, oh, actually, you know what? Maybe this isn't something that I want to do in 2025 because it's not, or this is something I want to start to do. So I think it's been a great chat. Thank you for facilitating.
Should I tell Jackie that you want to start cooking more?
I already do all the cooking, so you can tell her that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And
she
she'll be
doesn't
like,
know.
what does he
Like,
mean?
yeah, great. What do you mean? Do you want to start cooking more? He already does. She will occasionally, but I do the majority of the cooking. So, yeah, it's cool. But feel free. She'll be excited about it.
I definitely always walk away from these conversations with you all with some added inspiration and perspective and more curiosity going into the other things that I give energy to in my life. So I really appreciate you guys being part of this community with me this year and for all the years that we've done this. And I definitely look forward to making 2025 great with you guys.
Thanks for the nice words. I mean, it's the same for me when we have these meetings. They are very enriching, in my opinion, for me, for everybody. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Well, Happy New Year, everybody. Be well, be safe, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, guys.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.